So that point, that hard-earned point for Manchester, enough to secure second place. Just the mere 19 points behind Manchester City. Now then, before their defeat to Brighton last Friday, Jose Mourinho made some waves by saying, maybe you now understand why some players play more than others. The ones during the season who are critical of my choices. Why always Lukaku? Why always Lukaku? Why him? You have the answer now. Probably we are not as good individually as people we think we are. Again, that was after the Brighton defeat on Friday. Yesterday, before the West Ham game, Mourinho again, some of the players I'm totally convinced they're going to make it. I have some players where I'd like to have better than what I have. You have to try and succeed in getting every player to have the same mentality as I have.
Oh.
When you lose against all the teams that were promoted, it doesn't smell right to me. Not smelling right to Mr. Mourinho.
So it's not his fault.
He didn't have any criticism.
I think what we can take from that is, it's not my fault, lads. They don't have the mentality I have. Some of them are pretty good, but some of them are just not. So, you know, don't be coming to my door to...
And by the way, he didn't have any criticism of any of the players out there today, post-game.
Yeah.
None at all. Rashford and Martial not being in the starting lineup today.
To your point, don't come over here and look for any criticism over here. This is about the players. This is about their lack of mentality, their lack of toughness. Some of them that get opportunities, and when they get opportunities, they don't play well. And whether he has a point or not, I don't know, because you get lost in what he's saying. And all times he is creating this environment in which you're not encouraging your players to really meet that potential that you think they're capable of. If every time that something goes against Manchester United and Jose Mourinho comes out and says, well, that guy didn't do his job, this guy didn't do his job, he's not reaching his potential. Well, it's also your job to create an environment where these players can maximize and get to the level that they need to get to.
You may be being polite, and I don't often throw that accusation at you when you say he was throwing players under the bus, wasn't he? I mean, really, throwing players under the bus.
It's a Captain Deflecto thing that we've talked about Jose Mourinho for many years now. It's easier to go there. It would be so refreshing. If one of these press conferences he comes out and says, you know what, I didn't do my job well enough today.
Yeah.
That never happens. It's always over there. It's always over there. It's always that guy and that guy, not me.
And he never used to do this, did he, Shagger?
And that's the thing.
Early in his career?
As much as Jose Mourinho has always kind of attracted the limelight and taken it away from his players, certainly it hasn't been he hasn't thrown players under the bus as he has done since he arrived at Old Trafford. Whenever he was attracting attention, it was because he's trying to take attention off his players. Now he seems to be putting it on the players that he doesn't like or he doesn't want at the football club. All that being said, I think this is now Jose Mourinho trying to send a message to Ed Woodward and the rest of the Manchester United board that I need to spend and spend heavy. Didn't get all his targets last summer, disappointed by that, and now has been left trailing in Manchester City's wake, and he's trying to make up that ground. Will he? Can he? I'm not so sure.
Call me old-fashioned, will you?
Old-fashioned.
Yeah.
How about you go to the board and tell them that some of the players I have aren't good enough. In the meantime, I will work with them and try and do the best I can with them for the good of them and the club. But please, you need to get me some better players. How about you go that way?
Are they not good enough? Martial, Rashford? Well, I mean, are they really not good enough?
Let me give you... If we put Raheem Sterling next to Marcus Rashford, because they can be comparable players, right? You have seen a development in Raheem Sterling that wasn't quite there before the arrival of Pep Guardiola. Have we seen the same sort of development from Marcus Rashford? I think the answer is no. And so, at some point, yes, it's on the player. Yes, those are the guys that are out on the field and they're making the decision with the ball at their feet. But you have to have a responsibility as a manager to make sure that that guy develops as well. Because that guy developing makes you a better team and closes the gap between you and Manchester City. But that gap seems to be getting longer, bigger, than actually smaller. And I just don't see how a manager who got, in the middle of the season, Alexis Sanchez, who they invested a lot of money for, how he's complaining about not getting the players that he wants.
Look, two seasons ago, if you put Rashford next to Sterling, This is before the arrival of Guardiola, before the arrival of Mourinho. You'd have had Rashford all day long. Then both those managers come into their respective clubs. As much as you see the improvement in Raheem Sterling in the first year under Guardiola, I still think you take Rashford with his first year under Jose Mourinho. And then now, despite the ups and downs, despite some of the misses from Raheem Sterling, you still see his improvement and how he impacts a Manchester City side which are running away with this title. And yet still you look at Marcus Rashford. I looked at his stats today. He played 90 minutes 6 times this season under Jose Mourinho. Now you compare that to Raheem Sterling, who again, shoulder to shoulder, at the end of last season, I think 99 out of 100 people would have taken Marcus Rashford. Yet Sterling is the one who's playing, Rashford is the one who's now having to consider his future.
You know, one of the things when you're the head coach is you have to make sure that even though you have players who you may think are inferior to the ones you want to play, you have to try and keep them on board, because you can get suspensions, you can get injuries. Now, what happens if Lukaku gets injured during the week, this week, or next week before the cup final?
Right now. But...
Right. What happens if he's not fit?
Yeah.
Now I'm supposed to go up to Rashford or Martial and go, oh, I was only kidding. I didn't mean that you were Robbie. I didn't mean that you couldn't play. You have to have an ability to keep players who are not on the field and who are coming off the bench on side as a coach. Yeah. And if you don't, you can't ask them to run through a brick wall for you.
And he basically played 2 attacking players today against a team that conceded more goals than any other in the Premier League.
And as it has been the case for many games that Manchester United have played against inferior opposition, unwatchable. Unwatchable. I mean, when we talk about seeing highlights from Manchester United, where do you pull them from? It's not like they're creating chances left and right. And people get all upset when we talk about Manchester United. The truth of the matter is, this is not an entertaining team to watch. And part of that is that you haven't had the development of the players that you need. And that development is the responsibility of Jose Mourinho. It's on the player, but it's on Mourinho to create that environment. I think that environment is all over the place.